I had mentioned once earlier before that when you get a very large evening primrose, you actually get quite a bit of material. Well, from one or a few good evening primroses, you're going to get a ton of spindles. And all of these measure to be just about 8 inches tall. And this is just one of my bags that I got from last season. See the nice thick walls on them, even though they're true hollows. Alright, let me show you the set. Alright, so our next one is going to be Evening Primrose, which you saw as a hand drill. And these spindles are really, really tough. So their walls are really thick, even though it is a true hollow. And I have a couple spindles here. This one is 7.5 inches or 19 centimeters. This one is 17 centimeters or just under 7 inches. But this one, this thick one, is really short. It's less than 4 inches. It's actually 10 centimeters. And we're going to try this one. Okay. Now, the way we're going to be able to do this, to pull this off really, is store-bought cordage, because I'm going to need to keep the bow level with something this short. The cord can't ride. So we're going to wrap that around there, around our flexible oak branch bow. Now we're actually going to use a board of a base of Evening Primrose, split in half. It's been mated. It has the notch toward you, so you can see what's going on. Our coal transfer device is a piece of birch bark. And back when I showed you pressure hand braces, this is that oak one with the round top with the bark on it. And we're going to, the one that has plenty of room for your fingers up top. And we're going to use that one as a demo. We're going to oil our spindle a little bit, some linseed oil, work that in there, get in position. Now I'm going to use a shoe again because the base is really thin. It's going to move underneath my, under the arch of my shoe. Okay. It's going to be hard to see with this large pressure hand brace and everything that's going on. It's so short. Just warm it up. Nice long strokes. Look how long, using the whole cord. A little bit more speed. And there it goes. But there's our coal as our spindle goes flying across the room, as it does a lot of times. Alrighty, we got plenty to go over. So this is just one of many. Okay. So the next one I want to show you is giant ragweed, which is something I haven't shown you yet. And this particular spindle is pretty long. It's 9 inches or about 23 centimeters. Okay. It's about half an inch in diameter, maybe a little less. And it's has pretty much the same qualities as Evening Primrose, in the sense that it's pretty thick-walled. It's got a bit of a pith, although the Evening Primrose is fairly hollow. This one has a bit of a pith, but its personality is almost a little bit the same. I don't have anything thick enough for a base, so what I'm going to do is use our old friend Douglas fir here, which we got at the lumber store. Again, our cold transfer device is a piece of birch bark, but here I have a very large piece of scapula bone, okay, which I'm using as my handhold. I have a hole drilled here, which receives the brace end and spins very well. So I'm going to grease that a little bit, reduce the friction, right? FR friction, because we want only friction, pH friction, at the spindle and base area. Now my bow is the small rattan one with the store-bought cordage, and I'm going to wear my shoe just because I think the board is a little thin, and I'm going to it's going to move around a bit, so I want to keep it stable. Get to a nice stable position as we do. It's already mated. Unfortunately the notch is toward me already, but we're just going to light this up, I think, fairly quick. Now I'm not going to use a whole lot of pressure. I'm going to use mainly speed and rotations to get this coal, because I'm really going to take it easy on the spindle because it's plant material. Okay, and there's our coal. Okay, very nice. So our next one we're going to do is the plant Velvetleaf. If you remember, Velvetleaf has all that wonderful cordage that comes off of it. And the inside, if it's thick enough, makes an excellent spindle. Okay, so we're going to use this really short one here. It's 4.5 inches, little less than 4.5 inches. Okay, because that's the straight section I could get off that one piece. I don't have something big enough for a base, so we're going to use the yucca base. Alright, again, our cold transfer device is going to remain the birch bark, but this pressure hand brace is a carved piece of Atlantic white cedar, and it's molded to the hand where there's finger grooves, if you could see, very well carved, and it has a thumb groove here. Now, I did not carve this, so this was found lying around. And so what you have to do is you can't really grab around this. You have to choke up on it like this. So I didn't design this one. So you have to automatically curl your fingers like this in order to actually hold this, even though it has the grooves for it and everything. So it's got a nice wide brace socket hole, because our spindle is really thick. It's 1/2 inch, a little over 1/2 inch maybe. Everything's greased, it's already mated. The notch is toward me. Again, we're using our rattan bow. So Velvetleaf on yucca is what we're doing. I have my shoe off because I think the base is high enough that it's not going to slip. And again, this is a low density wood, so I'm really not going to use a whole lot of pressure. I'm just going to rely on speed and rotations to actually get this coal. It's warmed up, so here we go. Oh, we got a coal already. Look at that. That's how low density the wood is. It's so fast. But again, speed in getting your coal, how fast you get your coal isn't as important as actually just getting the coal, right? So. Okay, next one. Alright, so our next one is going to be Teasel. And these are all Teasel spindles from Teasel plant stalk pieces. And I was practicing with one here. Now, by the way, most of these are 8 inches, right? They are, again, definitely hollow, but like the bamboo, like I had mentioned earlier when we were doing hand drill, they have these nodes. So they have chambers. I was practicing with one earlier, and it went into a take ori. See that? From the string tension, from the unilateral force of the bow. Alright? So this is what can happen right here. See that? You can even see the cord compression of the spindle on it, because it is hollow. And the walls, Teasel is very light, so you have to be very careful. Alright? So that's no good. So our bow again is the rattan, but our pressure hand brace is Osage orange. I have 2 examples here. One is a block that is a spare block from bow making, like bow and arrow making. And this one has a lot of that negative surface area, which allows you to get your fingers all the way around it and get a good grip. And the hole sits in the palm near the wrist, which is very nice. The problem with this is the spindle is hollow, okay? So I can't really drill, especially into Osage orange, which is super hard. On the Jonka test, it's very high rating. And the hole here is small, and I can't make it any bigger. It's just going to pop out, right? Because this should be really deeply socketed to receive. Otherwise, the stability is gone, right? And we don't want that. But I have another carved from a knot of somewhere in the tree of Osage orange, and this one is shaped where you can get your fingers around it like this, and the socket sits near your wrist in the palm area, okay, and it fits right in that. You can see it's even tapered to even fit in that V that's made by your palm. Okay, and this one has a very large socket hole, so I don't have to worry about it coming out of while we're bowing. See that? It won't slip. So it's already mated, it's already greased. Now our board, our base today is pawpaw, and it's pretty high. It's at least 3/4 of an inch tall. So what I'm going to do is we're going to balance that out by adding, first we're going to put our cold transfer device down, and we're going to throw some coal extender sawdust in there and raise the height. Now what that does is it lessens the duration time, as well as keep the temperature. Temperature being a very important factor, right? Because it has to reach a certain critical temperature in order to ignite. Well, when dust, coal dust, starts falling into a high notch, it goes to the bottom and it cools down. And it has to wait for a pile of hot dust all the way at the top for it to finally ignite. So, and that just takes longer and longer, and that decreases our energy because it's taking longer. So we want to shorten the duration time, which leaves us enough energy, okay? We're going to heighten the height of the notch with the coal extender so that the temperature doesn't fall so rapidly, and we don't have to wait for it to fill entirely with dust that I have to create. All right. So I think it's large enough where it's going to sit under my foot. Again, I'm kneeling on my shoe. Alright, pull that toward me. Get in position. Now I have to carefully try to keep this from. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to treat this like a natural cordage, and we're going to hold it at an angle. So I'm going to bend the bow, and I'm going to keep the spindle from wrapping around itself this time as much as possible. Alright, so I'm going to get this warmed up. See, the bow is at an angle. Now, I shouldn't use a lot of pressure with this. It's a low density base and spindle, so speed and rotation is going to be key. Alright, let's try that again. Alright, so we're keeping it real here. And we're going to try again. This time make sure this thing is not, my pressure hand brace doesn't get tilted. And again, my pressure hand brace is round. It's hard for me to tell whether it's actually flat or not. But I'm going to try and hold it a little steadier this time. Now, hear that squeaking? This is a very important sign. That means I'm getting compression of the cellulose, the old cell structure of the wood itself. What that means is all that squeaking is that I don't have enough pressure to break through the glaze that's starting to form. So I need to actually add more pressure. You need to get rid of the squeaking. You add pressure till you get rid of the squeak. Okay? Add a little more pressure. And I take ori'd my spindle. See that? Because I couldn't balance pressure and with the stability of the spindle. So we're going to try again with another one. Okay, so this is actually the same spindle except it's shorter. So remember what I said about length and how the pressure, the forces in the middle will break something like this. So let's do this experiment and see if a shorter spindle is going to have more survivability, if there is such a word, for this method. Get position. Also notice that I've taken the bark off the lower part of the base end of our cylinder to make sure that there's nothing that's going to be in our way. Again, we have that squeak, so I need to add more pressure. There we go. Hear that sound change? All right. And look what we did. We got a call. Look at the cost. We just made it. We just survived. Right? The tribe gets to live. Very nice, right? Keep things in balance, no matter how many times it takes. Just keeping it real. Alright, so our spindle today is Cocklebur. These are a bunch of spindles that I've gotten from last year's harvest. They're fairly straight. And the thing about Cocklebur is that it has kind of a fibrous outer bark. Not enough that's good for making cordage, but enough that when it starts to fray, it gets in the way of the business end of the spindle in the base. So I've completely cleaned this spindle. It has a slight bend in it, which I think we're going to be able to get away with. The other thing too is that the top is hollow. It's a hollow, non-pithy plant stalk. So I can't drill. I'm not going to mate with a piece of wood. I'm just going to use my soapstone pressure hand brace for this one. Plus the hole, the socket is big enough to receive that large hollow space. Okay, we're going to stick with our pawpaw to see how that goes. It's about the same as the Teasel, so we're just going to stick with that. Also, our notch is also a little lower in height now because we drilled down a little bit with the Teasel. So I'm not going to fill it with coal extender this time. Okay, and see how it goes. Also, as a reminder, try to keep your cord either at or a little below center if possible. Okay, a little bit more toward the base is usually best, but try to keep your cord away from the brace end if possible. All right, so get in position. Let's see how this goes. Oh, and we have our takeori. It was so close to. Let's try another spindle. Again, height is an issue, so you can see what happens. It's good that you see these things now. So I'm going to really shorten this spindle. This one is 3.5 inches long, so we're really pushing it. And let's get in position and see what happens. I'm going to string this. Whoop. String that around. Oh, another takeori. Look at that. Just busted. Alright, let's try again. Alright, so we have another spindle. It's short too. This one's a little bigger. This one's actually 4.5 inches. So I'm going to get in position. And we're going to try and find that balance. Close. Hold on. We might just have to just light this up. Let's get rid of the center, the dead space center. That's in there. And keep going. I think our spindle is close to breaking again, so we have to be careful. Well, it's cracked, and because it's cracked, it's bending. See that? And because it's bending, it won't turn inside the hole. So this is another important lesson. Now what would happen here if I just kept going is this would obliterate, just like that. And we'd have another takeori. Alright, let's keep going. Alright, so we have a new spindle now. Again, this one is a little over 5 inches, or about 14 centimeters. Get in position again. Let's give this one a shot. Break through that glaze. And we got it this time. So never give up. Keep going. Don't stop. Put things in balance. And there you go. That's the lesson. Keep going. I said it was going to be challenging. Okay, so our next example are thistles. Okay, these ones are over 8 inches long. Okay, that I've collected. Put those back. So our spindle today is, let's see, 6 inches or about 15 centimeters in height. And I'll say it's about half an inch or a little 1 1/4 centimeter in diameter. Our base is going to be yucca, and what we're going to do is we're going to attempt a multiple hole, using the hole next to it as the notch. Okay. Again, the thistle is a hollow, so we're going to use our soapstone pressure hand brace. We're going to stick with the rattan, very flexible bow, because the thistle is a plant material. It's a plant stalk. Nice and easy. This wasn't even mated. We're actually mating it and trying to get the pole together. So we're going to do a little bit more speed. We're not using a lot of pressure. Actually, we drilled through the base. So I think we're going to try that again real quick. Look at that. The reverse dead space there that I took out. So we're going to try for another multiple hole. Alright, so we're ready to give this a shot again. We've got a crack in our spindle, which is catching want you to see this. There's a crack in the spindle, and it catches the edge of the notch. What'll happen is eventually, if you could see it, here's what's going to happen. It's going to destroy the spindle. See that crack right there? See that? We got us another crack. So we're going to change spindles. Alright, so we got us a new Thistle spindle. This one's a little taller, but I think it's a little stronger. This one's almost 8 inches. Okay. And we're doing the multiple hole. Going to get plenty of speed. Not a lot of pressure, because both of these are low density. There's our coal. Just keep going. Don't stop. Keep things in balance. And by the way, here are my Mullein spindles. And when it comes time to really harvest these things, you really get a lot. They tend to grow together in almost like a tribe, as many plants do. Alright? Okay, so here's Mullein. And I've cleaned up all the outer bark, because as you know, it has a little bit of fibrous outside that could interfere with the mating and the burning process. So that's all cleaned up. I have even a little mark here that shows that this is my my brace end, so I don't mix up the two, because it's kind of hard to tell. And we don't want to shove the greased end inside where the base end is, of course. So I'm going to grease that up a little bit. Now I'm not going to wear a shoe, but my base is half of the bottom of a large mullein stalk. So we're doing mullein on mullein. And I'm not going to wear a shoe because I don't want to accidentally break the base because it's so fragile. So I'm hoping I'm able to hold it underfoot with stability. But again, I don't want to crack it and then totally ruin its stability. So we're going to give this a shot. I got the notch facing toward you. And get it warmed up. I'm going to use a lot of speed and rotation, especially when it comes to things that are very fragile. You don't want to use too much pressure. I think that's done it. Yes, and there is our coal. So mullein on mullein bow drill. And there you go. Let's keep going. Alright, so our next devices are made out of burdock, or gobo in Japanese, if you're listening in Japanese. So this spindle happens to be, it's pretty short. It's 3.5 inches, or something like 9.5 centimeters, something like that. And so it's really, really short. Just cleaning it up here. My base is also a large section of burdock stalk, half, okay? And it's a really short base. So I'm going to be using, even risking splitting the base, I'm going to be using a shoe to help hold it with stability down. Hold it down. All right, let's see. The other thing too is that this spindle is so short that I can't keep it near my ankle because it's not tall enough. I'm actually going to hold my hand up against my instep to hold the spindle in place because it is so short. Okay. We're using our rattan bow, our soapstone pressure hand brace. I got this notch toward you, and we're going to do our best. Here we go. I don't know what that knocking sound is. So I'm sanding it down a little bit more. Let's restring. Alright, that sounds more balanced, right? So we're going to try speed and rotations. We don't have a lot of material for the base. We only really get one shot at this. And look how lucky we are. Even with all that turbulence, we got us a burdock on burdock coal. Okay, let's keep going. So our next example is Dogbane. As you know, is a really good cordage plant, and we're going to use it for a bow drill spindle. If you can remember, we used it for a hand drill spindle back in the day. And our base is going to be Atlantic white cedar. I think it's a little high, so I'm going to take a little dust and I'm going to fill that notch a little bit in there. Saves us a little time and energy. Okay. As you can see, I scraped away around the cylinder of the bottom so that no fibers get in our way and destroy the stability of the coal. Alright. And we're using our rattan bow because it has very good flex, and we don't want to take our spindle. And I think I'm going to just use my foot this time. We got our soapstone handhold. start. Strokes. A little bit of turbulence, but I think it's going to work. Starting to smoke. So let's go a little faster. Not a lot of pressure. Just speed and rotations for now. There's our coal. Nice one too. So I used a card for our coal transfer device. Now there's many ways to remove a coal. One is to hit your board to knock it loose, so that it just comes loose. The other is to carefully but not smother your coal. Place your knife or something triangular on top of the coal and roll the board without just touching or destroying the coal, really. See that? That's a good size one too. Okay, next. So our next example is lettuce. And these are really large lettuce pieces. These are really from the bottom of the stalk. And you can get a lot of these. I think this is the great lettuce. So get a lot of good spindles out of these. These are all like 8-inch long. Okay. And this is only one of my bags. I've got like 3 or 4 of these. Okay, so here's our spindle. This spindle's a little shorter because I've used it before. It's 6.5 inches. All right, and our pressure hand brace today is a cherry. Okay, as you can see, this was half of a sapling. Okay, it's rounded on top, still has the bark on it. And I could just get my fingers around this, okay, without it getting too crowded. But the hole on this one is large enough to accept the brace end of the spindle. All right, and we're going to do this on a base of Atlantic white cedar. And the notch is actually toward me, unfortunately. So you may not get a great view of it. Alright, be careful loading our spindle on our flexible bow. Start off with some slow strokes. I see a little smoke, so we're going to go for speed and rotation. We did get a coal, and it didn't break or anything, it just kind of popped out. So we're going to do just hold the knife over the coal and roll the board method. And that leaves our coal in place. Okay. Lettuce. On to the next. Alright, so our next example is milkweed. And here I have a whole bunch of milkweed spindles. Now, it's the personality and nature of milkweed to have sort of a square stem, if you could see that. And it's very fragile. If something's going to take ori, it's going to be this one. Alright? So I have for myself a very thick spindle, okay, which I've already made it together, and we're going to do a multiple hole example here in the Atlantic white cedar with this milkweed. And of course we're going to use our rattan bow because the tension should help keep a take ori from happening if we're careful. Alright, again we're using our cherry pressure hand brace because the hollow is so large on this spindle that it's the only thing that's going to hold it for us right now. Okay. Just get it warmed up. Nice easy strokes. Nice long strokes to get a lot of rotation. This is a pretty thick spindle and a short bow. Whoop. How'd we do? Oh, we got a coal. Before I gave up pressure. And you could see the coal sitting there in the old hole. And there we go. That was pretty quick. So our next one is Goldenrod. And this one happens to be about 7.5 inches or 19 centimeters in length. It is, according to the gauge, we'll say 3/8 of an inch. Okay, so we're getting pretty narrow, and we want to watch out for a take ori, right? Now, I got my hole, my notch here ready. The notch is toward you in this Atlantic white cedar. Alright. I'm going to use a shoe for stability. It's tall enough, so I'm going to get this right up to my ankle. I'm going to warm it up. Now I'm not going to use a lot of pressure with the bow. I don't want this to snap. It's pretty tall, right? So we're just going to do nice, easy strokes, long strokes for a lot of rotation. And we have a coal already. So we tap our board to let it go, and there we go. I should have had the coal transfer device there already, right?